The gospel lesson this morning comes from John 6:45 through 59. Jesus has referred to himself as the bread of heaven, and some of those listening are complaining and objecting. We begin the passage where Jesus speaks again.
It is written in the prophets, and they shall all be taught by God. Everyone who has heard and learned from the Father comes to me. Not that anyone has seen the Father, except the one who is from God. He has seen the Father. Very truly, I tell you, whoever believes has eternal life. I am the bread of life. Your ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness, and they died. This is the bread that comes down from heaven, so that one may eat of it and not die. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats of this bread will live forever, and the bread that I give for the life of the world is my flesh.
The Jews then disputed among themselves, saying, "How can this man give us his flesh to eat?" So Jesus said to them,
Very truly I tell you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Those who eat my flesh and drink my blood will have eternal life, and I will raise them up on the last day, for my flesh is true food, and my blood is the true drink. Those who eat my flesh and drink my blood abide in me, and I in them. Just as the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so whoever eats me will live because of me. This is the bread that came down from heaven, not like that which our ancestors ate, and they died. But the one who eats this bread will live forever.
He said these things while he was teaching in the synagogue at Capernaum.
Here ends the reading of the gospel according to John.
It's great to be with you today. Greetings from Northwest Nazarene University. I'm so glad to be with you today. NNU, while Nazarene, we have a lot of things for pastors of all denominations. We encourage you to check us out and use as resources. It's great to together be Christian in the Valley, and so it's good to be with you today. It's good to be with Gene Lubens. Gene was my pastor of worship when I was a youth in Seattle, Washington, a long time ago in a galaxy far away. But it's good to, I'm old, but he's a little bit older. So his daughter and I have been good friends for a long time, and is a colleague of mine at NNU. This morning we're going to talk about the Lord's Supper. And while I am an ordained elder in the Church of the Nazarene, I did my doctoral work at two United Methodist seminaries, one at Garrett Evangelical in Chicago, Illinois, and then I did some doctoral work at Duke as well. And so today we're going to be exploring the Lord's Supper, or Eucharist, or communion. All those words really mean the same thing, or the same event. And it's my hope as we explore this today, so the Methodists in our madness, I love that title, the gift that God has given us in the Lord's Supper. In my tradition, the Church of the Nazarene, we've kind of been doing it a long time, but we're not really sure why and what it's about. And a lot of our Nazarene theology, to be honest, started out being like this. Well, if the Roman Catholic Church believes it, we don't want to believe it. That was the maturity of our tradition, and hopefully Methodism is a little bit beyond that. But today we're going to explore the gift and the possibility and the imagination that occurs in the Lord's Supper. John 6, our text that we read, is a very important passage. Let's give it some context. In all the four Gospels, they have what's called the institution narrative. That is, on the night in which Jesus was betrayed, he took bread, broke it, gave thanks to you, gave it to the disciples, and said, "Take and eat." That's in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. But in John, when you get to the Passover scene, what do you have? You know what it is. You're just being nice. You have the foot washing. Remember that? In fact, on Holy Week, Maundy, Thursday, you have the command from John, "Do this as I have loved you," the new command. And so, but in John, there's no institution narrative unless you look back to John 6, our passage here. There is one miracle that is found in all four Gospels. There's a lot of things shared, but only one miracle makes it in all four. It's the feeding of the 5,000, which has just occurred previously in John 6. And John 6 is a really important chapter in thinking about the Lord's Supper. Several verses that we read speak of this. Jesus said, "I am the bread of life," verses 35 and 48. Other verses in John 15 says, "I am the true vine." Now, John's a curious book. John's the only gospel that has those "I am" passages. What do you think those "I am" passages are connecting us to? You're so quiet and nice. That's okay. I'm not sure if you talk back to Pastor Barbara. If you don't, you can talk back to me. It's fine. How many remember the story of Moses and the burning bush? Right? Remember when Moses was giving all of his excuses for stuttering, and he killed an Egyptian, and he was raised in Pharaoh's household, so no one's going to like him. Within all of those excuses, Pharaoh's like, okay, well, who am I going to tell them sent me? And what does he say? God names God's self and says, tell them the I am who is the I am has sent you. The very center of being in life itself. Well, these I am statements of John are to connect you immediately back to that reference to who God is, the I am of the Old Testament. In fact, as the church was wrestling through, choir's back here, that's nice. Church was wrestling through, should Jesus be divine or human, or the church kind of wrestled through this for 300 and 400 and 500 years. John was a very important book in arguing for the full divinity of Jesus. Of course, the Council of Nicaea and Chalcedon also emphasized Jesus' full humanity, but John is very important for saying the full divinity. So, in John 6, we have this institution narrative, this supper, celebrating Jesus. But what's going on here? We're going to look at four main points in thinking about the Lord's Supper that were very important for John Wesley and for the church. Remember, without John Wesley, there's no Methodist church, right? He's very important for y'all and for me all as well. The first thing I want to emphasize, the Lord's Supper is what John Wesley called a means of grace. So you've heard that phrase before. Basically what that means is it's an occasion where God offers healing and redemption. Now, we're not suggesting, Wesley was not suggesting, that God only offers healing in the Lord's Supper, but the Lord's Supper is a chief and primary place where God offers the church healing. Healing to love, healing to serve. So the first aspect of the Lord's Supper as a means of grace is the emphasis of presence. Now again, for most of the reformers, many Protestants were nervous about the Roman Catholic term transubstantiation. How many of you know that term but don't have a clue what it means? Okay, heard that term, okay? This is my doctoral work in looking at John Wesley. He really emphasized that in the Eucharist event, there was a real presence of Christ. But he did so in a way that he wasn't sure that the transubstantiation or the Calvinist consubstantiation, whether Christ is in the bread or around the bread or bodily, physically, he wasn't sure about all of that. So he had what I have called, and hang with me, a doxological agnosticism. Isn't that wonderful? I'll explain a little bit. My job as a professor and doctor of the church to teach you things.